Let's discuss what your master resume is, how to write it, and why you should have one. There are two distinct target audiences for this video about the master resume. One is a group of students in a paralegal studies program in Washington, D.C. The other group is paralegals in general. However, I feel that people who are not paralegals, people outside of the federal government in different sectors like for-profit and non-profit, can also benefit from the information shared here. A master resume can be called by different names, but at the end of the day, it's one resume. You can call it your master resume, long resume, cumulative, or forever resume. Pick one that works best for you so you can remember it and it helps you understand what the goal is. At the end of the day, a good resume is about good writing. You have to write well, you have to practice writing well, and you're going to be writing well about your own past experience so that you can promote and market yourself. So again, good resume writing is about good writing in the first place. I did a Google search on master resume, and as with most of my videos, I emphasize that there's so much information out there on the internet that it's a good place to start, but not a good place to end. So you get lots of results when you Google master resume. They talk about how to create one, what it is, examples, templates. I'm going to focus on one example, but don't let that stop you. I will use this master resume article as an example from Indeed.com. I'm not endorsing Indeed over any other website or platform that shares advice on career development. I suggest you take a look at this and then find other ones that you agree with or don't agree with. Of course, there are many definitions of resume out there. Here's just one to consider. It's a written document that summarizes your professional experience for the purposes of applying for a new position. You can find so many other definitions out there. But one thing this article does is it talks about what is a master resume. It's something that highlights all the career information you may require to write a more specific resume for a particular job. Later, I'll call that a tailored resume. By writing a master resume, you can copy all the relevant information you want when applying to a particular position. Generally, it's advisable to create a separate resume for each job application. I'm gonna ask you to read the whole article and encourage you to read the whole article. I'm not gonna read all of it, but I will focus on certain aspects of it. And this aspect that I just read, I do agree with the idea of having a master one and then creating tailored resumes. And I'll talk more about that at the very end. Something that's really important is this line is it's important to note that the master resume is a private document written just for you. As a result, it's going to be actually quite long and quite detailed, and your final tailored resume is going to be a much shorter version of that. I skipped down to the bottom in the other section, the other helpful tip section, where it's talking about format your resume for new styles. Again, I want you to read the whole article. I think it is important, this is where the tailoring comes in, that you format it as you would do a normal resume, but know that this is going to be very long, so that when you write a shorter tailored resume at the end, the format is probably very similar, just shorter in content. If you format it correctly or helpfully in the beginning, then this document, as it grows, as it increases, as it gets larger, the structured format will help you navigate it faster, easier in the future. This section talks about gathering all your past resumes that you may have written so that you can read through, remind yourself of various things that you've done. I agree with that, but another thing that I would add to this section is to gather your past jobs descriptions. You may have it, and those job descriptions are the official descriptions of the work that you were hired for. So that is language that someone else spent time creating, and you can lift that language appropriately and use it in your resume, unless you feel you can describe the work that you actually did better, and you can describe it in much more vivid and accurate terms. You may also be able to find your past evaluation letters or recommendation letters that say specific things that you achieved, and those can also be used in your master resume. Let's say you were writing past resumes and you forgot to add a particular job, but then you found your old job application, your old job description. That's a helpful way to remind yourself of past jobs you've done, because the more work you do, the more chances you are to forget certain details and certain accomplishments. Here it talks about contact information, and I think on the master resume it's good to have all of your contact information and what they describe listed. However, as you tailor the resume based on the industry, based on the requirements, and based nowadays on how people are sensitive about collecting other people's information, you may or may not include detailed or excessive contact information on a final tailored resume. On a personal note, I am not a fan of objective summaries or professional summaries on resumes. I feel like the space that those words take could be taken up with more work-specific information associated with particular jobs. And I also think the use of these summaries can vary whether you're in private sector, nonprofit, or public service like federal government or other government. So the decision to use a summary section should very much be after you get advice from people who work in the specific company that or organization that you want to work for. Here's a couple of scenarios, even though I disagree with the summaries, where I might use them or people similar to me might use them. So if you're switching fields completely, a summary section can help to explain your transition in a very positive way. If you are a person who already has a full-time job and maybe you want to take a part-time job, maybe it's to make extra money, or maybe it's to take a part-time job in a little bit of a different field or different area so you can develop certain skills that you can't develop in your current job, then to have a summary section that indicates why you are seeking this part-time employment, the fact that you are fully employed, and what you're hoping to get out of it. These things are about having the reader be able to quickly understand why you're doing what you're doing in this moment. So experience is what's considered the meat and potatoes, the heart of the resume. Of course, you're going to spend a significant amount of time, maybe the majority of your time, writing about your past work experience, perhaps even your volunteer or extracurricular experiences. While you do that, I want you to not get bogged down or paralyzed too much in writing out full sentences first. Write down what you can remember that you did at these places, and just keep going, maintain a flow. I don't want paralysis. I don't want you to get stuck. You can go back after you filled out multiple sections, filled out multiple workplaces, and then you can make them into proper sentence, and then you can strengthen your sentences later. But right now, focus on getting down the phrases that describe the work that you did. Don't get stuck on a whole section. As you become more and more comfortable working with your master resume, repeatedly editing it in the future, there's an advanced skill that you can develop, which is once you've written down one sentence that describes maybe one or two things that you've done at a particular job, you can find ways to write alternative versions of that same sentence that are a little bit different, but also just as strong and convey what you did. You could have about 2 to 3 of these sentences as backup or as alternatives. That way, when you're doing a tailored resume, you've already thought about different ways to express the same thing. Here's a way to visualize what I'm describing. So you'll have a master resume, you'll have a work experience section. Underneath that, you'll list job A, whatever that is. And maybe under job A, once you've written out where you worked, the dates, etc., then you have prepared already one sentence that describes maybe one task or 2 tasks or a skill that you have mastered at that job. That's one sentence, and then you had other sentences below that that are different. So you take this first sentence and you can come up with about 2 to 3 or just one alternative way to write that sentence that still conveys the same information as strong as the first, but it's a little bit different style. That way you have these alternates ready for you when you do your tailored resumes in the future. A lot of resume advice talks about skills. Here they talk about hard and soft skills. I think they could have done a better job of explaining those to people who didn't know them before. Example of soft skills are like how you get along with people, emotional intelligence skills, body language reading skills. Hard skills are more technical, more on the job, things that are actually tangible and the things that you've actually accomplished. Another aspect that I think is missing from the conversation about skills is the relationship between skills and tasks. So generally when you're hired for jobs, starting from the entry-level junior positions into senior positions, you always have tasks that you have to do. The job expects you to perform these tasks, deliver on these tasks. But generally, job descriptions and career advice talks about skills. So on the job, at whatever level you are, you're given assignments, you're given tasks, you do them in repetition from junior roles to senior roles. But the more you do these tasks, that should ideally lead to skill development. Let's use an example that you might have experienced if you've been through a school setting, let's say high school and college. Certain tasks that you've repeatedly done in terms of writing skills is that you've learned about the rules associated with writing, whether they're grammar or formatting, etc. You learned about outlining, analytical thinking when you're writing, or you're reading something and then having to write based on what you read. You have to think analytically when you're trying to write something that is persuasive. Practice drafting, editing, and proofreading. So those are all your tasks, and the more you do it, the repetition, the idea is through school you're supposed to get better at these, and the skill that you develop is written communication skills, how to properly communicate in a language, and also how to communicate well and articulately in that language. If you are writing your various resumes for the first time, or if you have existing resumes and you're looking back at them and all you see is a series of tasks that you've done, then you can use this model to help you think of, if I did these tasks in repetitions, what skills did I develop? Alternatively, if you have previously written about the work that you've done and it's heavy on just describing skills, but it's a little vague and it doesn't, like written communications is vague, but if someone were to break it down into the actual task that they've completed, the task they've mastered, and are demonstrating, I can do these tasks again in the future because I'm really good at it. Though all these things are different ways for you to develop sentences that articulate your past work experience and what you bring to the table now as an applicant for a job through your resume. Back at the Indeed article, they have a section on professional accomplishments, but they also associated with awards. I would just call this an awards section because I think that when you describe your different jobs and the things you've done at those jobs, to me, those are professional accomplishments. Feel free to use professional compliments, feel free to use awards, accommodations, or distinctions, whatever you feel stands out, but just make sure you're trying to be in the mind of the reader, and if you say distinctions, that they will know what that means. If you say awards, they will know what this section is about. Indeed recommends writing a certification section, and I feel that if you're a person who has numerous certifications, then yes, a separate section could be very helpful. If you are a person who doesn't have a lot of certifications for whatever reason, then under each job where you do have a certification, you might want to make that a separate line and start with certification, underscore that, colon, and then write the certification out. Again, that's for just if you have only a couple certifications and they're associated with specific jobs or experiences. So back at the end of this article, they talk about contribute to your master resume regularly. I agree with that. I agree that you should be updating. You should go back and edit it periodically. If you want to do it whenever you feel like doing it within a year, great. You can set up calendar notices for yourself to do it twice a year, so that's every 6 months, annually, however much. Again, that also depends on how frequently you have different jobs within a year, within a few years. Definitely once you've transitioned, you should be updating your master resume. Always keep in mind that something you do tomorrow at work may trigger a memory of something that you did similarly in the past that you didn't put into your resume. So you should have a system of making a note for yourself that will then get you to take that memory and write it out and put it in your master resume. Again, let's return to the fact that good resume writing is about practicing good writing in general, specifically good writing about yourself and your past professional experience. An important feature and goal of that is to remove all passive voice from your entire resume. To do that, you need strong and active adjectives and action verbs. Here again, Indeed has its own article on how to use resume adjectives. I encourage you to read through it. I'm only going to highlight a few features. Here you can use determined like an adjective, that I'm a determined person, or you can use this as a very strong verb, I determined blah 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 in this workplace. You can also use influential, or you can say I influenced. Or I was proactive, or I'm proactive and I proactively did this. Advance as an adjective, or you can say I advanced this project by. You can say you're productive or resourceful, or you can say you productively manage this resource by doing this. You can use profitable as an adjective, or you can use it as I generated profit, I enhanced profit, etc. So detail-oriented can be used as an adjective, or you can use it in the verb sense as I have detail-oriented skin, or I utilize detail-oriented skills to do X. You can use inventive, the adjective, or the verb I invented. Similarly, active verbs are so important for resumes. I did a Google search for strong verbs for resumes, and you pull up lists that are 185, 195, 340 action verbs. So I don't need to do an article on what are the action verbs. The internet has so many for you to choose from. You just have to sit down and take a look. Sometimes looking at these first before you actually start writing your work experience down in the master resume, looking at this list might trigger memories or help you see what you did in a different way. So try that out. If you are looking at past job descriptions and copying language over onto your master resume for them, or you're using things you wrote in a past resume, let's say you're looking to strengthen your words, strengthen your verbs, and you are having a hard time, the internet is also a good tool. You can just Google, or you can use a free thesaurus up to a certain extent online to help you with finding your synonyms. When you are thinking about strong action verbs and eliminating all passive voice from your resume, think about when you describe what you did, the words that you're using should tell the reader how you actually did it. When you're writing your master resume and then you review every single line that you wrote, I want you to do it with a goal of creating a movie inside someone else's head. So create a movie through your words inside the head of the resume reviewer, the people who might call you in for an interview, the people who are screening your resume. This movie should look like, as they read each line and you are describing the work you did, they should have a moving picture in their head of you actually doing the things that you described. So if you feel like when you review what you wrote that it cannot show a movie inside someone's head of you doing that thing, then take another stab at rewriting what you wrote. All of this advice leads me to an important assumption that I use when working on a resume, and I call that the 5-minute assumption. You will spend so much time on your resume, writing it, reviewing it, double checking it. However, I want you to operate on the assumption that the people who are screening your resume, the people who get your resume before interviewing you in person or virtually, only get 5 minutes with your resume. So that's why writing really well matters, because if you write well and you describe yourself and your work well, then in 5 minutes, they can get a really good impression of what you're capable of doing in the future. Despite all the time that you invest in your master resume and tailored resumes, always work with the assumption that people only have 5 minutes to read through your entire resume, whether it's for screening or whether they get your resume about 5 minutes before they meet you in person to interview you. If you go in with this mindset, that'll help you prepare for lots of things. But don't assume that just because it's 5 minutes that they won't pick up on errors or mistakes or poor writing in your resume. After you lay down the bones, the skeleton of your master resume, and you fill in the muscles and the fatty tissue parts of it, you will have your master resume, but you should be regularly updating it, strengthening it, adding to it. So other tools you can use to improve your master resume are resume buddies. 2 people get together and they have an agreement that they will help each other out with their resumes, so that by creating this relationship, they don't have to re-explain their past experience too much with each other. That's another form of having other peer reviewers, people who are similarly situated in their career as you. Maybe they have a similar level of experience as you. You can also get experience reviewers, people who have years more in the industry than you, people who are professional resume reviewers. And there are, of course, people out there who you can pay money for this to do, but you can also try to get experienced people in the workplace to donate their time or volunteer their time to helping you with your resume. So now you've read the articles I suggested, you did your own Google searches to read more articles, and you've worked on your master resume. Then you found a job posting that interests you enough. Then I want you to do a gap analysis to see your current skills and experience, how it matches up with the job, and what areas there's a gap in your ability to be qualified for this job. I call it the gap analysis. I did a video on it that I will link to in the description. Once you have the master resume, the job posting you're interested in, and you've done your gap analysis, then you can do your final tailored resume that will go into the application package for that job that you want to be considered for. The more you can get targeted advice for a specific job application process, the better off you will be. And that targeted advice should also apply to your final resume. So target advice is not getting general resume advice from people, even if they're very experienced in the industry. You should get specific advice to do the job application, including the resume, that is specific to your desired position, the office or department that position is in, the organization that position is. And the way you do this is you have to network and you have to find real people in those places where you want to work to get that advice. These real people that you should network with and interact with and ask for advice from, they should be able to tell you the preferences of that office for that position in terms of the job application. Is there styles that they like to see in the cover letter, in the resume, in the job application itself? Is there format? Is there language or jargon that is good to use so long as you really understand it? And they can also give you tips on other areas you should address that aren't very clear just from reading the job posting, reading that organization's website, or even if that office has a website specific to itself. These things might not be unclear, so that's why you are benefited from having inside information. So find these real people to help you further tailor your final resume to the extent that you can find them. When you're writing that final tailored resume, you're going to repeat a cycle of actions of copy and paste what's in your master resume into the new resume. You're going to edit, update, you're going to fix the format, you're going to review what you wrote against the job posting and against your gap analysis, and you're going to finalize it before you submit your application to that job. Thanks for hanging in with me throughout this whole video. I hope you walk away understanding what your master resume should be, how you should do it, what should go in there. Thank you for watching my video. I'd love to hear from you on email at fmahmood@wellesley.edu. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Bad Address. And if you do send me a connection request, please go ahead and send me a note. Before you go, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. And please go ahead and watch my next video. Thank you.